Yeah.
Michael Hall Jr.,
Yeah.
Ryan.
Yes.
One of those guys that's very frustrating to watch. What background info do you have on him?
I mean, he's like every typical Ohio State player of all time. He's very highly recruited, was number 54 overall player, 4 defensive tackle in the class, coming out, 9th ranked player overall in the state of Ohio, 72 tackles, 17 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. Cut short, and that was even on an injury shortened season because he actually had broken his hand during that season and kind of still ended up with those tackle for loss numbers and sack numbers. Entering his junior year, he played a little bit as a true freshman, not a ton though, only played in 4 games. But last year, obviously, he ended up with 7.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. The interesting part about him, Joe, and I think I know where you're probably going with this, is that all of his tackle for loss and sack production basically came in 3 games last year. There were a lot of games where no tackles for loss, no sacks, no big plays. But then you turn on Notre Dame was a big game for him. What was the other game I watched? Where at Michigan State
played pretty
was
well
a big
against
game.
Michigan.
Yeah, he played well against Michigan, but he didn't really make any like game-changing plays. Michigan State was the other big game he had, and I think he beat up on Arkansas State. So again, we're not about score scouting. To your point, there were some games that he was good, but just wasn't making like impactful big-time plays. But I think that you saw last year he was an inexperienced player that really, I think, he was kind of a cluster stat guy last year, right? Like it was just one of those guys that 2 to 3 games were fantastic. Kind of gave me shades of like Ziggy Ansah that played with the Lions. Not obviously not the same player, not even the same position, but Ziggy used to have like 8 of his 11 sacks in like 3 game span every single year, and then he would kind of disappear for some stretches. I think you saw Hall get lost in the shuffle at times because they were rotating Tyleik Williams and Teron Vincent and Jerron Cage, and there was a heavy rotation on the interior. And honestly, I'm excited because 2 of those guys, Vincent and Cage, are both gone this year. So I'm excited to see if Tyleik Williams are more of the mainstays on the interior. Maybe they don't rotate quite as much as they did last year.
So here's where I'm at with Hall. Very athletic. I think that he has a really good get off. He fires off the ball very, very quick. I think that you get a lot of flashes of when he can be twitchy and he can be problematic and he can show really good hands as a pass rusher and he can anchor well. And he shows all these flashes of him being a really good high level defensive tackle. What I have a lot of pause on though is that it's not very consistent. I don't know if that's maybe the result of what you're talking about with those other guys ahead of him and him just not being on the field every single down. So it's hard for him to get into a rhythm when you're rotating. But on some plays, it feels like I don't want to say he's taking off, but it's really not consistent at all. And that's why I like him. I think he's a high potential player, but I don't know if he reaches that potential. And maybe he could just be a good rotational guy that's got some flashes if he can improve and develop.
I kind of like Hall a little bit more than you, I think. Just kind of hearing you kind of say that out loud. Because I think that where we are similar, this kid is an upside play at this point, right? Like this is a young man where we only have 1 year of film and it's still kind of limited film. I think he played maybe like 300 snaps last year. So like it wasn't like we saw him extensively throughout the season. But I look at him and I say, decent length, despite only being 6'2". I think he's very well filled out as far as 285 pounds is an easy 285. Like he's going to be able to play 300 plus easy because he just doesn't have any bad weight on his frame. And I think he's got a really nice first step. I think that he is very flexible. I mean, there was a play against Michigan State where he almost ran outside track as a rusher and he's able to kind of bend the arc. And I'm like, it's kind of different a little bit, man. Like that's not a typical thing that you see from a defensive tackle. So I think that the inexperience shows up with the ability to consistently play at the point of attack. Hand usage, I think, needs to improve. I think he just needs to play more, to be honest. So this is kind of an upside play for me. I think that this year is going to be big to determining if he even enters the 2024 NFL draft because he's a young kid that hasn't played a ton, but he has a lot of upside to him.
Yeah, the upside you definitely see, and it's one of those guys that's very tangible where you get like 10 really good plays out of him a game, I think. Like, I think you get like 10 plays where it's like, wow, this guy has second round potential. He's got potential to be problematic and be a guy that is a disruptor and gets penetration. But the remaining plays out of the game that he's on the field, let's say the remaining 40 plays that he's on the field, it's, not a whole lot of nothing, not a lot of disruption. He kind of disappears at sometimes. And that's why, I don't get as excited as I would like to about a guy like this. And right now, my projection for him is I see him as a top 150 player. I don't think he's, a very late round pick, but maybe late day 2 if things work out for him and he shows some signs of improvement. But for me, this is mostly a day 3 football player.
I see 3rd round with this player right now. So I see borderline top 100. I think that he sneaks right in there because he has some legitimate movement skills. I think that there is upside here, right? And it's summer scouting. So we're projecting a good bit. We're projecting this guy to make a step forward. And I hope that him and Tyleik Williams take a much higher workload than what they did last year. I think they will, because I just don't think there's going to be as much depth as what they've had, at least during the 2022 season. So I'm hopeful for Michael Hall. I'm also a little hesitant to fully buy in, right? Because I think that this is a kid that, is he going to be in the 2024 NFL draft class? We have no idea. There's some juniors that we watch. We're just yeah, there's a good chance that guy's when we watch Kayvon Thibodeau like 2 years ago, right? It's yeah, he's going to be in the draft, right? It's not much of a debate. For Michael Hall, you can convince me he's a 2025 NFL draft kid when it's all said and done. So I think the upside play, but I really do like the fact that he's going into now year 2 of major playing time, probably going to be an exclusive starter this year. And if you have seen Jim Knowles during his career as a defensive coordinator, year 2 is usually where that defense takes the next step. Historically, his defenses have struggled in year 1. It's year 2 where they really start to hit their points. And I think that this year with JT and Jack Sawyer and some of these incredibly toolsy guys like Sawyer and Hall that were kind of developing in 2022, I think they have a chance to really break out in 2023. So I'm buying into the upside for summer scouting, but there is a tentative nature to it because you just don't 100% know what his role is going to be under Knowles this year.
I'm a little bit more wary on buying into that upside, but I will say I do agree with you. I think that this is a football player where if he gets the primary share of snaps as a 3 tech in this defense and rotates far more frequently and is one of the starting guys, he absolutely will get up into that top 100 conversation for me. The football player I see right now is still top 150, but I would not be stunned or shocked or also push back at all if this guy has a really good year and I'll be talking about he's, in my top 5 ranking pretty highly because of the way that he performed.
Joe, I think that Ohio State's defensive line in 2023 has the chance to be much better than 2022 because of some of the, I don't want to say addition by subtraction, but I will say this, is that I think that guys like Teron Vincent and Jerron Cage took reps away from better and more talented football players in 2022. I also think Zach Harrison, although ended up being a good football player this last year, he took reps away from guys like Jack Sawyer who needed reps, right? They need to play. So I wouldn't be shocked, and this is very counterproductive because you usually want to have a ton of depth up front, but I wouldn't be shocked if Ohio State, the fact that they maybe have a smaller rotation in 2023, ends up being a better defensive line. I think that could be possible. If Tyleik Williams, if Jack Sawyer, if Michael Hall, who are all talented, toolsy football players who have not nearly reached their peak because I just don't think they've been developed enough because they haven't played enough. I think that if that is the mainstay of this defensive line and they get a much higher bulk of the plays in 2023, I think this defensive line for Ohio State could be worlds better than it was last season. That's just kind of my early thoughts on Ohio State this year.
It's good note to wrap us up on. We've got 2 more defensive tackles coming your way on the next episode at Joe DeLeone at Rising Draft. We will be back with more. Enjoy the rest of your week. I just want to tell you folks about an exciting new partnership that we have with this channel with Underdog Fantasy. Ever since I joined, I've been having so much fun. There are so many different exciting games that make watching games during the offseason more exciting. I'm not the biggest basketball fan, but it has made it way more entertaining since I found Underdog Fantasy. And my favorite game to play so far, which I think you should try out, is Pick'em. It is so easy to play. Just pick higher or lower on your favorite player's stats and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Underdog keeps it simple with their easy-to-use website and mobile apps. Pick between 2 and 5 players to fill out your pick'em slip, get every pick right, and take home some cold hard cash. Use code HACK, H-A-C-K, HACK, like the name of this channel. Use code HACK to get your first deposit doubled up to $100 by Underdog. Go sign up. You won't regret it. You're going to have a blast. Check out Underdog Fantasy. I also want to tell you folks about our other recurring sponsor that we have on this channel, that being BetOnline, betonline.ag, which has all the updated odds, news, and anything for sports betting. It's my go-to source for when I want to be betting specifically on games. I love betting on college basketball or the NBA, especially, again, during the offseason. Always looking for more fun ways to be focused in on some of these other sports. It's betonline.ag and use promo code BELIEVE50. It's promo code BELIEVE50 to get 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts.